Mindseye has had one of the roughest launches we've ever seen, but with a recent update promising to improve performance, let's see if it's now in a better state instead of just roasting it to death like 6,900 other videos. Let's also break down what else needs fixing and whether it can even be saved. So I loaded it back up to find out, and right off the bat, the game does something I've rarely seen. As soon as you launch it, you'll notice this new message. The game straight up tells you whether your peasant processor might cause crashes or instability. And I could be wrong, but this has to be one of the only modern games that actually shows you the potential issues before you even hit the main menu. Now, once I got into the game, there was some noticeable improvements. Cutscenes run at a much higher FPS than before, with less stutter, and it just feels a bit smoother. Pop-ins are still a thing though, but I'm more concerned whether they are less noticeable during gameplay rather than the cutscenes, and we will get to that in just a second. And you will be pleased to know that this dreaded minigame, which almost caused my controller to be smashed between my neighbour's bucky teeth, has been made less difficult, which is a bit of a result, as it seriously took me about 8 tries before, and it was outrageously hard. There is now a new setting that allows you to disable or edit the depth of field, which is pretty good, I guess, as before it looked a bit on the piss at times, and I personally prefer to just turn this little bastard off. This update was mainly aimed at fixing performance, and while some parts do feel improved, it's still not where it needs to be. FPS drops are still an issue, especially during high-speed driving or even the scripted set pieces, and I'm running this on a 4090, so if I'm seeing frame dips, I can't even imagine how it looks if your PC build is about as powerful as your nan's BT Freestyle the Third. It could be Microsoft PowerPoint FC, to be honest, but I guess you could just turn down the settings if you need to, but then the game isn't going to look that great, so you kind of get done in both ways. I also still encountered a lot of pop-ins, which is partly because it's spawning objects for this particular set piece, but it is still noticeable and it really shouldn't be happening. When you are standing still and shooting enemies, the game does feel noticeably more stable, with less FPS drops, but it's the moment you start driving fast or when the action kicks off where the frame rate tanks harder than this poor bloke's career. On a serious note, who is this guy's agent? He needs serious sacking. Now on to the stuff that really needs more attention. What I found way more disappointing is certain aspects of the gameplay. Enemy AI is horrible at times, and you often see them running around like a blue-ass fly, not knowing what the score is. And what I've noticed during gunfights is the enemies don't even look like they're actually shooting at you. It's kind of hard to explain, but it almost looks like they're shooting through you, not at you. It just doesn't look right. But looking at the roadmap, this should be improved later this month, and it definitely needs to be, because the AI is pretty horrendous. But the physics is one big factor not many people talk about, and it needs to be mentioned. Let's just say this game will not be used for simulating hit and runs anytime soon. Christ's sake. Murking poor gobshite pedestrians, which let's be honest is a bit of a yafta, especially in a game with no cops, is not a pleasant sight. They literally ragdoll like a bunch of cardboard cutouts. Yeah, it doesn't look very realistic, let's just say that. Even when you've decided to meet your maker and jump off a building, the physics just look half finished. And I can't really see this mentioned anywhere in the future updates, but I do think it needs fixing. Now, in my original review, I said the driving actually felt solid, and I still stand by that, but driving this buggy is seriously AIDS. Again, I think it comes down to the physics, but I haven't seen anyone else mention how it literally feels like driving a goddamn balloon strapped to a bunch of wheels. It feels so floaty and weightless, it's unreal. Especially when you are forced to drive off-road, yeah, it's just not pleasant at all. The car constantly flips over like a bunch of burgers on the Barbie. Car handling is pretty good for the most part, but this thing needs fixing. The lack of vehicles is also something that needs improving. No planes, motorbikes, and a real lack of drivable cars. Even a game like Mafia 2, which is 15 years old, with no free roam, had more drivable vehicles, which is kind of insane to think about. about. But here is the real question. After a lot of hours played, can Mindseye really be saved? A lot of people are comparing this game to Cyberpunk's launch, and whilst I do kind of get the comparison, it's pretty wrong to do this, and there is one major difference nobody's talking about, and that is the replayability. Cyberpunk was a true open world RPG with branching missions, deep customization, side content for days, and you can easily rack up about 100 hours no problem. It's one of those games that takes years for the interest to drop off, purely down to the sheer amount of content. Mindseye is not that. It's a linear, story-driven experience, more like Mafia than Cyberpunk. And there is nothing wrong with that, but the thing is, once you finish the story, there's not really much pulling you back in. And this is something the Mafia series has always struggled with, but the story in those games is so damn good, that alone is often a reason for people to replay it. But Mindseye doesn't have a terrible story, but let's be real, it's no Scorsese piece, and I don't think people will be itching to experience it again. Sure, there is a free roam mode, and this could be one way to hook people back in after finishing the story, but right now it's pretty bare bones and you can't steal cars or even look at a damn map. So it's got a lot of catching up to do. Even remotely comparing this to Cyberpunk is utterly wrong, and both games are trying to accomplish completely different things. Mindseye has potential, and I do want to see it succeed. The recent patch has made some minor improvements, but Christ, this is going to be an incredibly difficult task that I will cover the whole way, so make sure to subscribe so you don't miss it.